and run that back here with the RBC. So going to cover our top matchups, our top first round leaders, our top outrights, obviously. And then whatever bets you guys want me to touch on, we can do some analysis live here on the chat and just go over whatever you guys want to. So if you have any questions down in the live chat, do not be afraid at all to go ahead and fire them away. But let's go ahead and hop right into the outright board to start. So at the top of the board, there's a lot of big names here, which is a little bit surprising given this field. I mean, usually you see maybe 2 to 3 big names up top, but this year we really have at least a big 5. Big 5 being Morikawa, JT, Cameron Smith, DJ, and Cantlay. And then after that, there's a pretty large talent gap, at least in my personal opinion. You know, guys like Matthew Fitzpatrick, Shane Lowry, Corey Connors, while I do think that they're solid players, you know, well above average for the PGA Tour, there's a huge gap between, you know, these guys up top that are perennial top 10 players in the world, and then the guys here that are, you know, more towards the 20s to 30s in the world golf rankings. So up top, you know, the guys that I'm trying to target, you know, really aren't here. They're just not enough value. If I was going to take anybody, it would be Patrick Cantlay. He's great at Pete Dye golf courses. I think he's coming in with a little bit of sneaky form. He's still gaining off the tee, still gaining a ton of strokes around the green. The approach plays have been a lot better over the last 2 events than it was for the last 3 to 4. Went on a really rough stretch there when he missed a few cuts. But the putter hasn't been there, and we know he's going to turn that around. I mean, this is a world-class putter. We're talking about Patrick Cantlay, for goodness sake. So do you like him at 20 to 1? You can get him at a variety of different books there. The MGM, Caesars, a couple international books as well also have them at 20 to 1. So not going to be hard to find that 20 to number on Cantlay. If I was going to try and take anybody else up top, and again, I'm not enthralled with any of these options. In terms of my actual betting card, I haven't bet anyone up top. It's going to be a few guys here in the 25 to 35 to 1 range that I actually like, one that I already have an outright bet on, and then a few long shots. I mean, we've seen guys like Stuart Sinkwin here at 100 to 1, guys like Kodaira were extreme long shots. Wesley Bryan was like 60 to 1 or something like that. Usually it's not a guy up top that wins this. So again, I would avoid this, but if there's anyone I was going to take, it would be JT. Because the recent form is unbelievable. He's gaining right around a stroke per round on approach. Off the tee play, he's doing his thing, gaining right around half a stroke per round. And the putter has been a positive, which was completely unheard of for JT. I mean, the guy hadn't been putting like that for at least a few years, but he's been doing that of late. So there definitely is something there. But I just think 14 to 1's fair, right? You can get that over there at Caesars, also at Bet365, but not something that I'll be firing on personally. I don't expect a guy up top to win this week. It's just not what we've seen over the years. I'm going to go ahead and continue with that same type of narrative. Moving down to the guys I like a little bit more, there are some guys here in like the 20 to 30 to 1 range that I definitely could see myself investing in. So first and foremost, Daniel Berger. I already have an outright bet on him at 35 to 1. You can get that over there. I believe that is Caesars Sportsbook. I got him elsewhere at 35 to 1. Down here in Florida, you got to be a little bit creative about it. But anyways, let's talk about a few of the guys here I'd like other than DB, because I talked about him in full detail during my core picks video. I like his all-around game. I think he's been in sneaky good form, right? He hasn't had any flashy performances ever since the Sunday meltdown, I guess we can say, at the Honda Classic. It really wasn't all that much a meltdown. It was difficult conditions. Sip Straka had a really solid round. Still ended up finishing decently there. And of course, a few other top 25 finishes over that stretch. He's been doing it as he usually does, gaining across all 4 major statistical categories. So he's not being carried by the putting, not being carried by the around the green play, like a lot of the other guys in this range. So he is my favorite guy in this range. The other guy I'm actually considering going to is Webb. I mean, he's won here before. We saw that in 2020. He's a perfect skill set fit, you know, accurate off the tee, really good with those irons, really what you're trying to lean in at this golf course. And also with the putting, he's gained a ton of strokes on these greens. In fact, that's the main reason he's had so much success at this golf course. So it's not just the ball striking that I like, the course fit. He has a lot of familiarity here. He's won here before. You can get 40 to 1 over here at Bet365. For the most part, you probably won't be able to access that. Closer to 35 or 33 to 1 on more of the mainstream American sports books. So I haven't fired an outright bet on that. If you can get access to anything close to 40 to 1, then I would be very tempted to add it to my card. So as of right now, my main guy up top is Daniel Berger. Guys I would consider adding, like I just said, Webb Simpson, could consider adding JT or a Patrick Cantlay. Cantlay would be my number 2 option after Daniel Berger, that's for sure. Then JT, and then we go to Webb Simpson. Let's move on a little bit further. I've added Kevin Na to my betting card, so I guess he's not a long shot, but I consider those at 50 to 1 and longer to be slight long shots. He's a perfect course fit. I like him in terms of a core pick this week. He's very solid off the tee, very accurate, which is really what we're looking for here. And he's added distance over the years. And you don't need distance here, but if he's going to get it out there, 300 yards instead of 290. So be it. That's just a little bit of a boost for him. But mostly the approach play at the Masters was unbelievable. If you take a look at some of the shots gained metrics for data golf, he had the best approach play of anyone in the field, which for Kevin Na is just outrageous. He's not typically that guy. He's not usually going out there and gaining in bunches with his irons. But he did that at the Masters. And at the match play from the eye test, again, some of the shots gained metrics are really wonky for the match play. He looked really solid with the irons as well. So I like him at 50 to 1. You can get that. I believe this is DraftKings here. No, this is actually BetMGM there. You can get him there at 50 to 1. I like that number. A few of the other international books, you can also get him at 50 to 1. Just a solid course fit. The recent form is really sneaky because, again, no shots gained at the match play, no shots gained at the Masters, but he looked via the eye test really solid in the two things that we're looking for, and has had a ton of success at this golf course in the past. He's played here 14 times, made the cut 10 times. A lot to look forward to there. So the second guy I already have an outright bet on top of Daniel Berger. We'll have to see if I end up adding Webb Simpson or a few other guys in this range. Another guy I'd consider adding would be Chris Kirk at 55 to 1. So very similar, to somebody like a Webb Simpson, very similar to a Kevin Na. Relatively short but accurate off the tee, can really lean into that approach play, but a little bit less of a putting specialist than somebody like a Na or a Webb. So the fact that he's up here at 55 to 1, I'm not really sold on it, right? If he was closer to 60 or 65 to 1, I'd be much more of a buyer at that type of number. But as isn't really something that I'm looking at too much. Looks like we have Catch Me If You Can down there in the chat. First off, welcome. Glad to have you here, man. He says Matthew Neesmith. So I'm not sure what his number is. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point. I'm going to assume he's at least like 75 to 1 or something like that. Depending on his number, I may be interested. I just don't know his number off the top of my head. Let's go ahead and figure it out right now. So Matthew Neesmith. Let's make sure we don't skip past it here. I'm going to go slow enough. Here he is. He's 150 to 1. So that's an extremely juicy number. I thought he was going to be like 75 to 1. Especially with the recent form, he's looked really good with the ball striking. Typically these sports books are on that type of thing, but you can get him at 150 to 1. Let's see, at BetMGM, a lot of the other international books. Yeah, I'd be a buyer on Matthew Neesmith at that number. I was expecting like 75, 80 to 1, like I was saying. So, when you're getting that type of inherent value based on where you think they should be priced, that's usually an automatic bet for me. So when I get off here, I'm very likely to go and probably put like $20 on Matthew Neesmith at 150 to 1. Ends up winning. Wouldn't mind taking home $3,000. That wouldn't suck at all. So we'll have to see if it ends up working out for us. But yeah, long shots like that. So if you're looking at anybody in that long shot range, we're going to talk about that later. It has to be guys that are coming in with good ball striking form and that are accurate off the tee. And that's what Matthew Neesmith does. He's not long off the tee, but he is relatively accurate. And he's long with those long irons. So I shouldn't say that. He's accurate with the long irons. Which means when he's laying up off the tee with his 3-iron, with his 3-wood, that type of thing, should have some success there. So certainly somebody I'm going to. And one thing I want to mention as well is the weather. So this is more for the guys that are long shots. On Thursday, it looks like it's going to be windy pretty much all day. So especially when we're talking about first round leaders, I don't think there's necessarily going to be a AM or PM advantage, especially here for the first round. In terms of trying to take guys with outrights, it does mean that I'm looking for players that have been successful in windy conditions. So when we get to Russell Knox here in a second, certainly somebody I'm going to want to hunker down on. So let me go ahead and find his number here. He's here at 95 to 1. I've already put an outright bet on Russell Knox. I ended up getting him at 105 to 1 a little bit earlier in the week at the sports book that I'm using. And right now he's at 95 to 1, I believe, over there at FanDuel. So you still have that number up there. You can see across the board, he's much lower. A lot of the other books have already steamed him down because of some of the action on him. I'm assuming a lot of people like me see the same thing that I do. This guy's accurate off the tee. He's one of the best approach players in the world, and on greens that are slow. So if you filter it by slow greens, we have 11 or 11.5 on the stimp meter. His shots gained putting goes up like at least a quarter of a stroke per round, depending on what sample size you use. If you use it for just the last year, it goes up over half a stroke. So for whatever reason, when the greens are running slow, Russell Knox has success. And it's also going to be windy. That's why I wanted to time up this weather report here. When windy conditions arise, he's also about half a stroke better per round. So he has a lot of things going for him here. He's accurate off the tee, like I said. He has that approach play that we're looking for. I love him in DFS. I love him in the outright market. Just everything points to him having such a good week this week. I'm going to be all in on every single format that I can play him in this week. He's going to be a play for me. So I'm betting him. I'm playing him in DFS, playing him on Prize Picks. I'm going to have him in Showdown. Just again, when you have a play like this that you're very convicted about, you just have to go there and take advantage, right? You can't be passive about it. You have to be willing to kind of go all in at times. And that's going to be my all-in play this week for sure. It's going to be Russell Knox. Let's touch on a few other guys here. Jason Kokrak at 66-1. I didn't see that number before. I believe it was closer to like 60 or maybe even 55-1 the last time that I saw it. That's extremely tempting there at 66. He's, of course, a lot of the comp courses I'm looking at, like Colonial, he's won at. He's had some success at Sedgefield. And I believe that's it for the success at the comp courses, but that's good enough on its own, right? He's won at one of the comp courses. That's a huge feather in his cap. So certainly at 66-1, even if he's not in the best recent form, somebody I'm considering, but he wasn't top 10 at the Masters at one point, ended up throwing it away at the end, ended up finishing top 15 at the very least. That's a solid finish for Kokrak, right? We're not expecting him to win the Masters. And it's not even a good course fit. The Masters isn't necessarily a course I would expect him to play all that well at. So do not hate it at all. I played him at DFS last week. He took advantage of it there. Certainly somebody I'd consider adding to my outright card. In this 100-1 range, other than Russell Knox, not anybody I'm super enthralled with. Wouldn't surprise me if Sebastian Munoz went out and won this golf tournament, but trying to time that up is nearly impossible with this dude. He just goes off at random times and you have to be there for him. So I'd much rather play him in DFS than bet him in the outright market. At the very least, if he finishes top 25, that might be enough in DFS. Moving down a little bit further, Cameron Tringale is laying there at 125, just trying to troll me at this point. I won't bet him. I am playing him in DFS, though, which is bad enough. That's the most exposure I'll get to that type of guy. If he goes out there and wins for the first time after all these damn starts on tour, so be it. But it's not going to happen. Pan Kazire at 125-1 is an interesting option, though. I like the course fit. I like the fact that he's been solid at these coastal tracks. The approach play has been a real bright spot for him for quite some time now. It's been at least the last 3 to 4 months now, but he's gaining over half a stroke per round, which for Pan Kazire has led to some pretty consistent results, which usually he was so volatile, right? He would go week in and week out, missed cut, top 25 finish, miscut, fifth place finish. That was the type of profile that he had. Now he's going out there and making cuts. He's starting to string them together, and that's going to lead to him really taking a step forward in his career if he keeps that up. So hopefully he can do that. Somebody I'm playing in DFS would even consider taking in the outright market. He does have that type of putting upside. Joel Damon at 140-1. That seems just like a glaringly incorrect number. I believe that's Bet365 that's at, so I don't have access to that. Number I have access to is probably closer to this 125-1 number. So I wouldn't be able to get that number, but if you can, that's an intriguing number, 140-1. I think he should be closer to 100-1. I think what they have him over here at FanDuel is probably the fair betting value. So even if you can get 125, there is a little bit of value there, but at plus 140, it's something that I'm actively looking to bet, but I can't do so myself. Maybe down a little bit further, Matthew NeSmith, we already talked about him at 150-1. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I'm going to be adding that to my card there. I had no idea it was 150-1, and I am going to be able to get access to that number, which is nice. But that just seems incorrect because what we saw at the Valspar, right? He was the best player tee to green in that field, was gaining off the tee on approach around the green. He's always kind of been that guy, right? He's always been a really solid ball striker. Just never really held it together for 3-4 rounds. Usually it was like 1 or 2 rounds at most at an event. Really volatile guy who misses a lot of cuts, but he hasn't been that same guy of late. He's really started to become a little bit more consistent, kind of like a Pan Kazire. And for an outright type of number, you want to see that type of progression, right? He's been like 150-1 at Matthew NeSmith for like years now, for like a year and a half at least when he's been playing consistently on tour. But this is now the one time I actually feel like it's actually a solid number to attack, right? Because we've actually seen a sign of life with that tee to green play. We've seen him actually get into contention. And at this type of golf course, it fits much better into his game than a Valspar Championship. This is the type of venue where you don't have to be very long. Of course, that's what you're looking for with Matthew NeSmith. Also, a course where you just need to be good with your iron play. And that's the one thing that he really shines at. So if he can lean into that, I definitely see a solid week for him there. So that was a really sharp catch by Catch Me If You Can. Something that I'll actually be adding to my card. That was such a good catch. Moving down a little bit further, Charlie Hoffman's unbettable until he shows any type of form. He couldn't get it done at his happy place, so he's not going to get it done elsewhere. Davis Riley at 175-1 is also a really juicy number. It's also at a book I can't get access to, but if you can get anything close to 175, I think this 110 number is probably adequate on him, right? It's probably right about fair, but 175 is just ridiculous. If you can get that on Davis Riley, then by all means, but I don't think that's going to be an easy number to find. KH Lee, they have him down here twice. You can see they have the abbreviated name and this. 175-1 seems also a little bit high. It seems like it should be a little bit lower than that. Lanto at 175 to 1 seems fair. I do think he'll play well this week, but his win equity isn't really there. Top end upside, I kind of question that with a Lanto Griffin. Moving down a little bit further, not anybody I really see any point of putting money on at this point. Just would be more than a flyer pick than anything. To say that they have really any chance of winning this week would be pretty much just you're lying to yourself. The only guy I could see myself putting any type of money on would be Garrick Higo, because we see him win a lot. We've seen him win internationally. You see him worse. What it was the second start ever on the PGA Tour. He ended up winning. That speaks for itself. The guy's a proven winner. He's just extremely volatile. So 300 to 1 seems fair, but that's also a number you're going to have a hard time getting. You can see towards the American books, 250 to 1. I believe that's over there at BetMGM. It's the best that you're going to get. Luke Donald at 300 to 1. Similar story, right? The best number you're going to get is like 200 to 1 on him, but if you can somehow get like 300 to 350 to 1, maybe put like $1 or $2 on him, just as a just in case type of pick, because I do like his course fit as well. And where's Morgan Hoffman? I just want to show you his number just for lulz. If you guys don't know who Morgan Hoffman is, he's down here at literally 1,000 to 1. Don't bet him, but he's a great story. He has muscular dystrophy. He went down to Costa Rica to try and heal himself, and apparently he has. So much so that he's playing golf this week and apparently looks good enough to actually start at a PGA Tour event. So good for him. Really good story, of course, for Morgan Hoffman. Don't bet that number. You're going to hear him talked about this week for sure on the broadcast, because usually he was a really, really bright player back in the day. So it was only like 3-4 years ago as well. But obviously dealing with muscular dystrophy is more than an obstacle. So was dealing with that for quite some time. So good story there, of course. Let's talk about the first round leaderboard, though, because this is also where I'm trying to target some of these long shots. So the guys up top, you do get some relatively nice numbers on them. The one guy I really have my eye on up top would be Patrick Cantlay. 33 to 1 compared to 20 to 1 in the outright market makes some sense there. You can get 30 to 1 at some of these American sports books rather than 33 at Bet365. So that would be the market that I'm looking at right there. Some of the long shots, I'm trying to go down a little bit further. These mid-tier guys kind of get steamed when it comes to first-round leader, not necessarily the best bets to look to. But when you start to get into this really long shot range is where you're looking for a one-round sample size. Guys that are just extremely volatile can go out there, gain a ton of strokes on the greens in one single round. The one guy I really have my eye on, and I got to see what his number is here. Cam Davis, I was considering, but he's not the one I had my eye on. There he is. Pangazire, 130 to 1. Looking for guys that can gain in bunches. Pangazire fits that bill. I want to talk about Cam Davis. I just went over him right here. Another guy who can get extremely hot in round one. We've seen him be first-round leader more than a handful of times over the last year. So I like both of those numbers at more than 100 to 1. Moving up a little bit further on the board, Eric Van Rooyen, also an extremely volatile golfer. You can't get that 90 to 1 number, though. If you could get something close to 90 to 1, I think that's a really solid number to target there. I live in that 100 to 1 range, though. Cameron Davis, of course, somebody I'm taking a look at. Potentially adding to my card. We'll have to see if I end up doing that, though. Moving up, again, this mid-tier range, these guys kind of get steamed down, right? There's not as much value here. There is some value at the top of the board. Like I said, Patrick Cantlay 20 to 1 in the outright, 33 to 1 in the first-round leaderboard. Even JT at 29 to 1 over here in FanDuel. Could potentially get a bet for me because he's got that top end upside. All he has to get is that hot putter. Could very well go out there, shoot 6-7 under par in round one and take it all by himself. Now, if you're taking a guy at 29 to 1 or 33 to 1 to be first round leader, you need them not to chop, right? Because a lot of these books, they have those dead heat rules where you're going to end up splitting with somebody at 80, 90 to 1 and hardly getting a payout at that point. So just keep that in mind with some of these guys up top. You really need them to win outright, right? To not be chopping with more than one player at most, because it can get pretty harsh with, a 29 to 1 number when you're, not getting paid anywhere near that in terms of your payout. So just keep that in mind with first round leader. It's a little bit of a different beast than it comes to outright betting, especially if you haven't done that before. Let's move over to matchups though, which is my favorite part of the show. It's the most profitable form of betting when it comes to this. So let me go ahead. I'll bring this down so I can actually bring up my screen here, and we'll find the best matchups on the board. Which honestly, they do them in 3 balls most of the time on this, which I don't mind. 3 balls aren't the worst thing that we can go with here, but I like when sometimes they just have straight up matchup bets, right? But they'll just pick 2 players towards the top of the board, just do it based on actual finishing position. So we'll have to see what they have on here for us. They might not have them on the odds checker board. I might actually have to bring up like DraftKings Sportsbook, which I will. That's fine. DraftKings matchup bets. So we'll go through the 3 balls, and we're going to go through like the head-to-heads if they have them up on here, because that would be ideal. All right, there we go. Yeah, we do have them up on DraftKings, so we'll be able to do that. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. And it looks like we do have a question about McNeely, which I'll go ahead and cover here. So first off, question about Mavericks is, and how about Maverick McNeely? I thought his outright number is fair. I think he's a better DFS play than he would be for an outright bet. We've seen him get a contention, but he hasn't really shown that ability to close. This isn't his perfect course fit either. I think he's a little bit of a better fit at a longer course because he does have that distance. He's really good with those long irons. I think he'll be okay this week. That's why I'm playing him in DFS, but I just don't think this is the best course to bet him outright, particularly because the number isn't super inflated on him. I think it's relatively fair for McNeely, whereas his DraftKings price is excellent. I think he's going to be super low owned. So we'll have to see on McNeely this week. Maybe if the number drifts a little bit, I'll be more to consider it. So it's heading into these 3 balls. Then we're going to go ahead and actually look at the matchups here. We're going to actually take it players head to head. Let's start with the 3 balls. So we're going to go group by group. If there's a bet that really draws my eye, I'll go ahead and point it out to you. So first group is Berger, Connors, and Mckenzie Hughes. For me, of course, if I'm going to bet anyone, it's going to be Berger. The guy I think ends up winning this tournament outright. Hughes, though, is a relatively decent course fit because it's a course that's not that long, right? He can lean into that short game that he's really known for. Corey Connors, a really straight driver of the golf ball. So this is probably not a bet for me. Plus 130 seems fair for somebody like a Berger. He's the rightful favorite here, but you'd be hoping to get a little bit better value on it, especially considering that Corey Connors is in his group. Same thing with Mckenzie Hughes. Both of those guys are respectable players. It's not like they're complete pushovers. So probably a no bet for me. Here with Cantley, Kisner, and Horschel, it's also a relatively strong group, right? This is going to be one of the feature groups that you're seeing on ESPN Plus. That's on TV for most of the time. If I was going to bet anyone here, it'd be Kevin Kisner. Kevin Kisner is, of course, somebody who's had a ton of success at this event. He makes sense from a course fit perspective, relatively short course off the tee that plays right into his hand. Also, of course, where you need to be a really solid iron player. Just 3,800 square foot for these greens. So somebody at plus 250, I think you're getting enough value there. I mean, of course, you have Patrick Cantley in the group, guys like Billy Horschel, who, of course, aren't pushovers. They're top 25 players in the world. But this is also Kevin Kisner's track, though. So I think he's being a little bit disrespected. The true odds should be closer to maybe something like plus 200. So it's not like you're getting crazy value there. Maybe 3 to 4% of value, if that. But if I was going to bet on anything there, it'd be Kisner. But likely a no bet for me. Moving on a little bit further, we have Terrell Hatton, Cam Davis, and Luke Donald. I mean, that's a no bet for sure. I mean, Terrell Hatton is definitely the deserving favorite right there. But Cam Davis at 225. I like his outright betting odds, but in just this small of a sample size, right, in a 3 bet, not something that I'm willing to weigh just plus 225 on. I really want him to be like plus 350. And the reason why he's not plus 350 is because Luke Donald's in his group and he's plus 275. Also, somebody I think has some upside here, but not somebody I'm willing to lay just that type of odds on, right? If this was something like Terrell Hatton, Patrick Cantley, and then Luke Donald, it'd be like plus 550. Then I might consider actually taking somebody like him, right, in just a 3 ball. But as is, this is also a no bet. Here with Morikawa, Sink, and Simpson. Now, I think that Morikawa should be the favorite here, but I do think that guys like Webb Simpson and Stuart Sink bring inherent value. I would side towards Simpson, though, because he looked excellent at the Masters. Really, we still had question marks about the health, but I think we can completely kind of put those aside now. He told us he was healthy a few weeks ago. He's looked solid at golf now for 3-4 weeks. Shots gained metrics have just improved and improved and improved as he's been able to shake some of that rust off. So I'm treating Webb Simpson like he's a healthy Webb Simpson. This is a course that he's won at before, has multiple top 10 finishes. This is pretty much the house that Webb Simpson built. I mean, we were considering this course to be that just a year or two ago. So at plus 180, even though Collin Morikawa is clearly the favorite and should be the favorite here, I think that's some pretty solid value. I think he is much better than the win equity that implies. McNeely, Poulter, and Bryan. Perhaps this is a better way to actually target Maverick McNeely because he's plus 120 here, and Ian Poulter's been in dreadful form. Wesley Bryan, of course, doesn't even have his tour status anymore. So you can completely almost throw him out of there, even though he is a past champion at this event. He's just not the same player anymore, right? He was 60-1 to win this event when he won because he was actually really good on tour. He was actually consistent posting these performances. Not that player anymore. Ian Poulter, of course, also a shell of his former self. Couldn't even get it done at the match play or at the Ryder Cup. So if you can't get it done there, don't expect it to happen at a PGA Tour event. So clearly the plus 120 on McNeely is actually, it's pretty solid. So I'd take that for sure. That's by far the most confident matchup bet that I've had so far out of these three balls. Smith, Niemann, and Im is the next group. Smith is a deserving favorite, but guys like Joaquin Niemann and Sungjae Im both have numbers higher than they should be. If I was going to have to decide between the two, it would certainly be Sungjae Im. Just from a skill set perspective, he does everything we need, right? Whereas Joaquin Niemann kind of lacks around the green and at times can lack on the greens with the putter. Sungjae Im going to be a consistent gainer of his irons around the green and with the putter. We know that. At these positional golf courses, like the ones that you find down there during the Florida swing, he's also had a ton of success. At the John Deere, he's had success, right? Another positional golf course. So for me, Sungjae Im at plus 200, somebody that I'll be taking. Jordan Spieth, JT, and Shane Lowry is the next three ball we're considering, which is a real powerhouse group, right? We can write off Jordan Spieth at plus 250. I'm not really considering him. He looks like complete shit at this point. Justin Thomas at plus 120 and Shane Lowry at plus 170. They just seems like the right number. I think they've got this one completely priced right. I think even the Jordan Spieth number could be right around where it should be, but none of them is a bet that I'm really looking to look at there. Of course, the guy who's going to win, at least per my metrics, is going to be Justin Thomas, but I think the plus 120 number is fair. And because think about it, right? McNeely is a clear favorite at plus 120. That's why we actually want to bet that number. JT still has to deal with Shane Lowry and potentially Jordan Spieth just chipping everything in left and right. So just a group that I'm not looking to bet in this type of market. You don't have to bet every group. And lastly, we have Sepp Straka, DJ, and Matt Kuchar. Straka and Kuchar are live here. I think that they shouldn't be plus 200 to plus 250, but the number for me would be Straka at 250. I mean, the ball striking has been excellent. He's been really good off the tee, really good on approach. And the putter, he's gaining nearly 9/10 of a stroke per round with the putter, which is absurd. The guy's just been making everything out there. And he was known as a ball striker before. So obviously that's going to come to an end at some point. He's not just going to make everything for the foreseeable future, but I do like his chances there for sure. He's a solid ball striker. The putter's been there. And if he can continue that, plus 250 odds, really solid for sure. Let's continue with some of our head-to-head matchups. So this is going to be more just finishing position, against another player. There's some huge advantages to be had here because, these sports books, they're using a lot of just running shots, gain metrics, using official World Golf data type of stuff, and just running a 50-50 simulation where they're not really considering the golf course. For major championships, they will, right? They'll cater some of their models towards the golf course. But a lot of times here, it's just shots gained over the last 24, whatever rounds they're using in their algorithms, and then course history. They just look at people's results at this golf course specifically, rather than analyzing a player's skill set. So for people that don't have much of a sample size here, there's a lot of edge to be had. There's also a huge edge to be had with some of the newer players on tour. So, some of these matchups up top, with some of these big name players that you might be tempted to go ahead and bet on are going to be, sexy, right? Those are the ones they want you to bet on because they have the most information on these players. They're also the ones that you're the most likely to go out and bet on. So we will touch on them here. But the bets that have the most inherent value are going to be the guys at the bottom of the board, right? The guys that we don't necessarily know, what's going on with them, like a Jordan Spieth. Do we go and try and attack a Jordan Spieth? Do we go and try and attack recent champion J.J. Spaun, who perhaps is getting a little bit too much respect right now, right? Or Cameron Young, the new guy on the block going against the old man Ian Poulter, right? Are you a believer in the up-and-comer or are you a believer in the old-time stalwart, right? Those are the type of situations that you should be looking to go after. We're going to get through the board here, but just keep in mind, I know everyone likes to talk about the sexy picks up top, but sometimes it's those nitty-gritty picks down low that really make you money. That's for sure. All right. Let's go ahead and see if there's any questions down in chat. Doesn't look like there are. That's all right. And we'll go ahead and go through these head-to-head matchups here. So up top, we have Fitzpatrick versus Berger. Two players I will be playing in DFS. I like both of their course fits here. But I don't understand why Berger's the underdog. I mean, he's just a higher pedigree player, especially if you take a look at his PGA Tour starts. Now, I know Fitzpatrick has had a ton of success over there in the European Tour, but you guys know my take on that. I call it the AAA minor leagues of the MLB Baseball League over there on the European Tour. And I know I get a lot of crap for that, but it's true. Just everyone that comes over here is always touted to be this, next big thing. They're always, prolific winners on the European Tour. Then they can't get it done over here. There's a few exceptions, right? There's, Shane Lowry is one of those guys who's kind of broken that mold, but there's a whole lot of them that have done the opposite, right? I've come over here and kind of flopped. So that's my take on it. I know I get a lot of crap for that, but I'm going to stand by that. It's a take that I truly believe in. So for Berger here, plus 100, I think he's should be the favorite, right? I think it should be a swapped line there. So that is a line I'd also be looking to target there. Even though I like Fitzpatrick this week, he shouldn't be the favorite here. That's incorrect in my opinion. Next is a complete 50-50 between Cam Smith and Patrick Cantlay. Now, it just comes down to the Pete Dye specialist, right? Cam Smith has been in unbelievable form, but he did have that Sunday meltdown, so there could be a little bit of a, hangover factor there for Cam Smith. Maybe he has some of that negative energy this week as well. Patrick Cantlay, on the other hand, loves Pete Dye golf courses, pretty much succeeds every time he gets on one. So at minus 110 and that 50-50, that could get a little bit of action from me. DJ and Lowry's another 50-50, which, they've done a pretty good job with some of these here. Of course, most of them, the goal here is to be a 50-50. Some of them, sometimes it's like plus 110, minus 120 or whatever. But either way, Shane Lowry, I'd consider taking him here, but DJ just has that upside. So this is a no bet for me. I think that the consistent play would be Shane Lowry, but I am worried about DJ, right? He's my core pick this week for a reason. I think he has a ton of upside, but also a relatively low floor. So if I was just going to bet this and I had to bet the group, I would take Shane Lowry, but I don't feel all that great about it because I have a sneaking suspicion that DJ has a really big week. Hadwin versus Horschel is the next group. And really it's also, Hadwin's the guy I would favor here, but it's a very similar situation where, Horschel's a high upside play. He's also been playing some really solid golf. Just I don't know if there's enough in edge to be had there. So it'd be a no bet for me personally, but if I had to bet it, I would bet Charles Hadwin. Next group is Russell Henley versus Corey Connors. Corey Connors is the bet here for me. And, I'm not a huge Corey Connors stan. I think you guys understand that. I fade him a lot here because I think he's a little bit of a fraud when it comes to some of his shots gained metrics. Still think he's a great player, but I don't think he's a top 10 ball striker in the world. I think that's a little bit overblown. I think people just, exaggerate some of the shots gained metrics, right? He's a good ball striker. He's just not a top 10 ball striker in the world. Russell Henley, on the other hand, also a really solid ball striker. He's getting close to a stroke per round with his approach play. I just like Corey Connors' off the tee game a little bit more. He's going to be aggressive. With the driver, Corey Connors is still extremely accurate. He's among the top 20 on the PGA Tour in driving accuracy, yet still being in the top 50 in driving distance. So he still uses driver early and often. And at a golf course where a ton of people are going to be scared to hit driver because they're worried about spraying it left to right, Corey Connors is probably still going to keep the big stick out. So I like him over Russell Henley there, but I don't love either play. I mean, I think they're both overrated. Just in general, like they always are way higher owned than they should be in DFS. They're always way lower priced than they should be. So I think that's really the reason for it. They're always priced by DraftKings like $500 to $600 less than they should be. So they always are extremely high owned. But in terms of a head-to-head matchup, I love that they put them together because I treat them the same. They're like almost the same player to me. I would take Corey Connors there though. Charles Howell III versus Mckenzie Hughes, another 50-50, a no bet for me. I don't think either one really differentiates themselves there. I mean, Charles Howell III, a little bit more consistent than a Mckenzie Hughes, but also a no bet. Now, Kisner versus Knox, also another interesting matchup. Some of these matchups that DraftKings put together are pretty intriguing. I like the fact that they've done some of these here. Either way, though, I'd go Kevin Na side over Kisner. I like the recent form a little bit more. I like what we saw at the Masters, also at the match play. Of course, Kisner made it to the finals of the match play, just ended up coming one match short. So you don't want to hold that against him. But last week at the Masters, Kevin Na looked a lot better than Kisner. So that's the side I'm going to there. Next up, we have Kokrak versus Fleetwood. And this is a case where I think that Kokrak is the favorite here for a reason. A lot of the comp courses I'm looking at, like I mentioned before, he's had success at, like Colonial, another positional golf course. Relatively good with the approach play, looked good at the Masters, was in the top 10 for most of that golf tournament. So I do like him there, and I would bet that at minus 120. Yeah, Brian Harman and McCarthy, another 50-50. I like Harman's ball striking more than McCarthy. McCarthy has that putting upside, but if you're looking for that, 50th percentile type of performance like we are here for matchups, I would certainly look Brian Harman's way. Next up, we have Wako, and then we have Sanjay. Sanjay's a little bit of an underdog here, so you're not getting all that much value, right? He's just plus 100. I would take that side, though. I just think he's a little bit more well-rounded than a Joaquin Niemann, and for that 50th percentile type of performance, That's the type of profile that we're looking for. Next up, we have Mito versus Tom Hoagie. Two of the DFS sweethearts, another group that just great that they put those two players together, but I would go Tom Hoagie's way. He's a little bit more consistent. We already talked about Cameron Young here. I like him over Ian Poulter. Poulter is a fade this week. He hasn't looked like himself for quite some time. Chris Kirk over Siwoo Kim is a no-brainer for me. I love how consistent Chris Kirk has been. Webb Simpson versus Maverick McNeely is a solid matchup. Another solid choice by the DraftKings bookmakers here, but I would take Maverick McNeely at plus 100, believe it or not, just because he's a little bit more consistent than Webb and doesn't have the injury concerns, right? While I am confident Webb has a solid week, I've considered even betting him outright. McNeely's also up there, right? He's in that 50-1 range. He's being respected by the sports books nearly as much as Webb Simpson. And the real difference between Webb and then a Maverick McNeely was around the green play. Webb hasn't been good around the green for quite some time. For whatever reason, he's struggled with that, whereas McNeely, he struggled a little bit, but not nearly as much. Both of them, it's weird. I'm just going to look at the shots gained metrics here on my other tab right now, just to get an idea on both of their numbers, because they're both been uncharacteristically bad in that category. So I have it up over here. Over the last 50 measured rounds, let's see, Webb Simpson, he's better neutral. So the last 50 measured rounds, bigger sample size, he's gaining around the green. If you take a look at the last 24 measured rounds since he's returned from injury, he's right around a neutral player around the green. If you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds for McNeely, it gets a little bit more favorable, right? He's right around a neutral player around the green. But for the last 24 measured rounds for McNeely, he is losing significantly to the field, over 0.2 of a stroke per round. So that's concerning for me, right? You have them going against each other. So it's just it's an interesting little situation that, they've done a good job, DraftKings, really. They've done a really good job by putting these matchups together. If you're just going to take the upside, I would take McNeely, but that's also a no bet. It's just too close. They've done a really good job with some of these matchups. I would take Streelman over Spawn for sure. I think Spawn's getting a little bit of that hype because of the win. Jordan Spieth versus Alex Noren. You take Alex Noren because of his consistency, also because of how Jordan Spieth's been swinging the ball. There's going to be other books, right, where you get somebody other than Alex Noren versus Jordan Spieth, and I would pretty much take anybody versus Jordan Spieth as long as they're a relatively consistent player. Next, you have JT and Morikawa, a battle of the heavyweights, where JT is a huge favorite here, and I'm not sure that's really warranted, and this isn't something I would go ahead and bet, but I would take Colin Morikawa there. I just don't think he should be a minus 130 favorite. And lastly, you have Harold Varner III versus Adam Hadwin, and I would take HV3 all day. I think Adam Hadwin's getting way too much respect because of those last three starts where he's finished top 10 on all three of those starts. But at the same time, he's not that player historically. We've seen him for 6 to 7 years. We know that he's a top 25 machine, not necessarily a top 10 machine. And in terms of skill set, right, in terms of pedigree, these are similar players, right? That's why they're here in a matchup against each other. HV3, if anything, at these North Carolina golf courses to begin with, has had a lot of success. I mean, over there at Sedgefield, which is also my main comp for this week, he was our first-round leader, was in contention twice over there for the Wyndham Championship, ended up bringing it home almost twice, which is pretty ridiculous for HV3. So in terms of comp courses, I really like him there. And in terms of this week in general, Adam Hadwin's a fade. It just seems like a trap, right? 20% of the field is owning him in DFS. He's out here against HV3, and a lot of people are going to see those three top 10s and go, oh, I got to bet on Adam Hadwin. Just seems like a trap waiting to happen that DraftKings has set out there, whether it's in DFS or in the outright betting market. Looks like we have a few comments to catch up on. Nick says, I may have missed it, but how do you feel about Svensson here? I like him in DFS more than the outright market just because he hasn't really gone into contention yet. We don't really know what he's made of when things get down to it. So more of a DFS play for me than anything just because of his ball striking. But he's way up there in terms of number. He's at least 300 to 1. So if you're looking to just sprinkle a few bucks on someone, I couldn't fault you for that, but not going to be a core bet for me or anything like that. And Johnny just says, I just received a notification about PP at not working at the moment and maybe down for 24 hours. Let me know if you or anyone can't see the end of your comment. I cut it off there. Yeah, I have no idea about Prize Picks, man. I don't work for them or anything like that. So yeah, you'll have to ask them for their support and whatnot. I was able to get my card in today. So luckily I have my card in for the RBC Heritage for round 1 and whatnot. So hopefully they get that fixed soon, Johnny, but I'm not the right guy to ask about that. You'll have to ask their support or something about that. I couldn't see the end of your comment there either. So sorry. Either way, guys, that's the end of what I got here for you. So if you're watching this in a replay, do not be shy at all. Go ahead and comment any questions that you have down below. I appreciate all your support here. Make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Make sure you are subscribed here to the channel if you haven't already as well. That way you don't miss any of our content to come. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys later, and best of luck.